How many did you count? 17? Anyone else? 22? Wow, 22. 15, I heard someone say 15. Anyone else? 19? How many of you saw the gorilla? So about 10%. Let's watch it again. This is the same video. Okay, you know what this illustrated to me when I first saw this? There are some who accept that the gorilla is there and want to know more about it. I didn't see the gorilla for 30 years when it came to the age of the earth. I never even knew there was an argument for a young earth. So when I was given arguments for a young earth, over time I accepted them. I saw the gorilla, someone pointed it out to me, and I accepted it. You have others that see the gorilla, but they try to ignore it or downplay its existence. And I thought of maybe fellow Christians who maybe believe in an old earth and they've been shown the evidence, but they're really struggling with it. And then there's some who just refuse to see the gorilla. You point and it's right there, and you argue against its existence. And that's what reminds me of that last movie you saw. It's amazing how evolutionists will see that and say that there is no creator, that this all happened by chance over time. Here's what one evolutionist said. He's somebody who refuses to see the gorilla. Even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, such a hypothesis is excluded from science because it is not naturalistic. Even if all the data point to intelligent designer, he doesn't care because he wants it to be a naturalistic explanation. He refuses to see the gorilla. So what is evolution? Essentially, it's goo to zoo to you. But more strictly defined, neo-Darwinism is two things. It's DNA mistakes, mutations that are mistakes in the DNA, plus natural selection. So they say that somehow mistakes over time can be selected by natural selection and to improve an organism or to evolve all life that we see today. Well, let's look at this. We're going to uncover some of these illusions. Here's the truth about natural selection. By the way, my younger brother did some of these graphic art here. For example, you notice how people, a lot of times, they might hit a squirrel while they're driving down the road, but boy, if that thing's already dead on the road, ooh, I'm not going to drive on that thing. So this squirrel evolved a tire print on its back so that he wouldn't get hit if he went across the road. And then that moose, of course, he thought if he evolved antlers with the bullseye above there that some of the redneck hunters would not shoot him in the head. What's the truth about natural selection? Do you realize that creationists advocated natural selection long before Darwin? Really what natural selection is, it's a conservation mechanism. It prevents lethal mutations from wiping out a population. But all natural selection can do is reshuffle genes. It cannot create new genetic material. Let me give you an example. Consider these two bears. And this is kind of basic genetics. You can use Punnett squares to do a genetic analysis. But this is kind of a crude example, but it works for this illustration. So let's say that each bear has a long-haired gene and a short-haired gene. So we know from genetics you're going to get a variety of long-haired, short-haired, medium-haired bears, right? Well, what happens if an ice age comes along? These guys, over time, they're not going to survive, so all you're going to have are long-haired bears. But here's the point. Nothing evolved upward. If anything, it's de-evolution. They've lost the gene for short and medium hair. And actually, if you look at the scientific literature, scientists are amazed a lot of times where a characteristic can show up that they thought was suppressed. So even though they lost the gene, there's so much capability in the genome that it can resurface. But that's a testimony to design. But that gives you an example of how natural selection really works. Okay, let's look at another entry in my guest book from 2000. Soon, because of the continued persecution of the black roaches, they go extinct. Thus, after a while, the population would be white. Should the floor tile be changed back to black, the process would occur again. The only difference would be that the black would be selected for. Thus, in conclusion, creation is wrong. So sometimes I can't resist. I know that sometimes in the Bible God uses sarcasms. You know, Eli on Mount, what was that mount? You know, where he used sarcasm about, oh, is your God going to come down? And yeah, Carmel. So sometimes I get carried away. Here's what was my response. Dear James, thanks for your story about the roaches. It was so compelling that I have no choice but to tear down my site right away. Thanks again, your pal Fred. So here's the other aspect of evolution is this random mutation, these mistakes in the DNA. You know, here's an example out of a textbook, a high school textbook, Holt Biology. They talk about this fruit fly that has a mutant that gives it 4 wings, and they admit that they're mostly harmful. And they say beneficial mutations are the raw material for natural selection, but they never give examples. They never give examples in the textbooks. Here's a slide that Ken Ham likes to use. I like to use it too. So random mutation actually leads to loss of information. If a random mutation occurred on my laptop, which seems to have happened a little bit during this presentation, that's a loss of information. It's not improving. And genetically, we actually know this. I know there's some humor in this slide, but it's true that wolves geneticists believe that they have a less of a genetic load. They're more healthy. And one of the least healthy dogs are poodles. They have all kinds of different diseases. And what it is, it's the result of losing information over time with all this breeding that they're doing. Certain dogs are much healthier than others. This is a clip of this guy's going to ask Richard Dawkins. I don't know if you know who he is. He's kind of like the spokesperson for evolution. He's going to ask him to give just one example of a beneficial mutation leading to new genetic information. You know, if evolution is true, there should be billions upon billions of examples. So watch his reaction. Bill? Let me start that over. Okay, here we go.
Professor Dawkins, can you give an example of a genetic mutation or an evolution